Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed lunch and maybe had a chance to wander around the exhibits outside. Well, it's my honour to preside over what's commonly called the graveyard slot. But I can promise you it's not going to be like that. This is going to be a lively session. We basically face a multiplex world, don't we? With all sorts of different threats and challenges in front of us across the world. In this respect, and I think this is an important point, we are all frontline states now, wherever we are, and however much we'd prefer not to be. The previous two panels looked at the strategic background and the consequences of what is a radically new style of government, organisation, international context, whatever you want to call it, which has created numerous challenges that we need to address. The second panel emphasised the need for us to work together to deal with common problems as much as possible, with each other rather than against each other to the extent. Now, we, on the other hand, in this panel, are going to look at the new challenges, what's new in the maritime domain that we need to address. And the whole point is to see how these are identified and varied and viewed across the world in different places. And I'm certainly not going to say what I think they are or how they should be dealt with. That I'm going to leave to four eminent speakers here who will give their own different angles on what these new challenges at sea actually are. But I would be surprised if some of these didn't come up. Grey zone operations already have. They were in both panels. The challenge and the opportunities of new technology. Things like generative AI. How will we cope with these things? How will they change things legally, operationally? Will we be able to control these sorts of issues? Where do drones come into all of this? And of course, let's not forget the threats to the sea itself and everything that follows from that because of climate change and so on. How might this affect navies and coast guards? And in that respect, I'm particularly pleased to see in this group, not just navies, because it's not just navies who have to deal with it, but also a representative for the really important Coast Guard community that we've got represented here in this hall. But that's enough from me. It's an appetizer. So without further ado, we should get cracking. Each speaker has around about 8 minutes to talk, please. And then we'll have a few observations questions from me, maybe. And then we'll throw it open to the rest of the floor. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, all. Ambassador Young, Admiral Watt. My thanks to the Royal Singaporean Navy and certainly all of the organizers for bringing this incredible event together. For me personally, having come back here after 20 years back in 2005, it's just an incredibly rewarding and rich opportunity to be able to do that. The Royal Singaporean Navy, and indeed all Singaporeans, they've continued to welcome Canadian sailors for many years. And the hospitable nature in which they've done so has just been absolutely remarkable. So again, thank you for that. I'd like to acknowledge the previous panelists for setting the stage for a very rich conversation, and certainly my co-panelists here today as we work through a bit more of the contemporary issues, I think, that a lot of us are grappling with over the next little while. And it's great to see you again, Professor Till, after all those years ago back in JSCS Shrivenham back in the day. So again, great to see you. So Canada is a Pacific nation with Pacific interests. And we have a robust trading relationship with the economies of the region, deep people-to-people ties, and a rich history of cultural exchange. And indeed, today, fully half of all new Canadians immigrate to Canada from the Indo-Pacific region. And so this represents our largest diaspora. Thousands of Canadians live and work within the countries of the Indo-Pacific. 2 years ago, Canada released an Indo-Pacific strategy to deepen the already strong relationships we have with many of the countries represented here at this conference. And we are strengthening those connections each and every day through government-to-government engagements, as well as through the private sector, security, and civil society cooperation. We've got 5 interconnected strategic objectives: promote peace, security, and resilience, expand trade, investment, and supply chain resilience, invest in and connect people, build a sustainable and green future, and remain an active, engaged partner in the region. These are the core tenets of our Indo-Pacific strategy, and I think my presence here today reflects Canada's contribution and desire to work even more closely with all of you across all sectors. So the Royal Canadian Navy has been a part of the Pacific region for decades. In recent years, that has included a sustained presence of ships in the region, participating in exercises, building our own competencies, and increasing collaboration in this incredibly important part of the world. And indeed, our intent is to continue to enhance our defense cooperation with ASEAN and North Pacific partners, including through these partnerships, which will allow us to benefit, indeed, all of our sailors, because that relationship is incredibly important in a world that's constantly changing, certainly nowadays, at an accelerated pace. So as we've seen, kinetic military campaigns between states has once again become a reality. We must work together to understand these new developments and to ensure we are fully prepared to defend our countries and our national interests. The unprovoked war of aggression in Ukraine is demonstrating that the quick advancement of new technologies and the use of commercially available options have a serious kinetic effect in wartime and certainly influence on outcomes. And perhaps this is nowhere more pronounced than in the realm of uncrewed systems. Cheap, relatively easy to procure, tactically effective, uncrewed systems are changing the way conventional war is being fought. And indeed, we heard on the panel this morning that once an exotic capability can find the nations with robust military capabilities, new groups now, and certainly the acceleration of innovation on the battlefield, is showing that those groups can influence huge swaths of territory. Look only to the Houthis and their influence on global shipping in the Red Sea. And we now, as conventional navies, must adapt. We must leverage the lessons being learned in these conflicts and certainly adapt not only our response, but our culture at the same time. In the RCN and the Royal Canadian Navy, we are aggressively pursuing the use of uncrewed systems to gain advantage at sea. My teams even today are working each and every day to bring forward the latest technologies into our inventory, and this includes many uncrewed systems, as well as the capabilities to defend against them. In working through this roadmap of capabilities, particularly with surface vessels, it will allow us to maintain persistent domain awareness in the approaches to Canada, including the Arctic and not only the Atlantic and Pacific, and conduct the route survey operations that are necessary to defend against threats to seabed infrastructure, conducting mine countermeasure activities that are effective while at the same time ensuring that we are not unnecessarily endangering human life, and finally and ultimately developing those platforms to develop kinetic and non-kinetic effects. In other words, our approaches will look to arm those capabilities to make sure that we have all layers of defense options available to us. In the undersea realm, perhaps most significantly, the RCN is pursuing uncrewed technologies that will deliver capability anywhere in the world in which we are operating, whether that's the warm waters of the Pacific Ocean or the very cold and inhospitable waters of the Canadian Arctic. Primarily, those systems need to focus on how do you communicate with autonomous vehicles through the ice to thousands of kilometers back to headquarters. How do you ensure that artificial intelligence-enabled mission execution with the ability to sense and avoid undersea obstacles is incorporated into those platforms? And then again, how do you ensure that the onboard capability to process the data that that technology senses and then optimize that and send that data back at home? And in the air, the RCN is committed to technological solutions that deliver our ability to sense beyond the capability of organic crewed aircraft and go into the battle space where the danger to human life is greater. And in all of these efforts, we are learning from the present. How do we acquire these capabilities to meet our requirements at the same time at speed to ensure their quick acquisition for frontline units? And as we are seeing in Ukraine, and certainly in the Red Sea and even in the Baltic, conventional forces need the ability to defeat uncrewed systems as much as the ability to deploy our own. Indeed, now the RCN is working with all of the other branches of the armed forces in Canada to ensure that we field both counter uncrewed systems and that they are scalable, transferable, and integratable. It's become clear, at least in the near term, we must be prepared to fight cheap with cheap, and that we are ensuring we have the ability to detect, identify, and track threat systems when they are inbound, and then mitigate or kill them when they are through the use of the RF spectrum or through a kinetic or hard kill. And these have cultural implications too. Do you put response and defense in the hands of a single sailor, like it is today on the battlefield in Ukraine, and not within the web of a layered level of responses orchestrated through a tactical operations room, which is our culture in the Navy? So how do you incorporate the single sailor to defend the platform upon which that sailor resides? And finally, it's not just about bespoke systems, many of them you see out there on the trade floor today, but how do we readjust our corporate and institutional enterprise? Key digitalization efforts mean that we are relevant across the RCN by providing tactical levels from the tactical to the strategic, and indeed, again, the cultural implications of changing how we do our business. Connecting our sailors, ensuring that they have connection points to workstations, because we don't have workstations in all of the ships to offer to them. So how do we use their personal devices to do all of the things that are routine military administration, training schedules, all of those sorts of things enabled through their personal devices to be able to do that. And indeed today, the Navy provides and develops RCN applications and analytical products that enables that talent, allows us to do the data assessment so that we can make informed decisions on where our investments need to be in all areas of our business. This data for decision makers, being able to identify, prioritize, and govern high priority data to ensure standardized use and accessibility for all of our commanders wherever they are deployed. That data volume is enduring, and how do we appropriately parse it out so that we can use that which is of advantage to us and that which is irrelevant? So the majority of our software development today is indeed based on cloud development so that we get the best access to groups of developers so they have the best tools and available to them to ensure that we can have the best performance at their disposal. And that innovation is so important. That predictive analysis allows us to be effective, and it studies what defense research and industry allows the prediction of machine layers. So for example, equipment such as engines and gearboxes, how do we do predictive analysis to ensure that we are doing the preventive maintenance at the right time? And again, using artificial intelligence tools to be able to allow us to do that. In sum, at the end of the day, we're focusing on all of these efforts to ensure we're ready to fight, to defend Canada, secure the North American continent, and be an effective partner both here in the Indo-Pacific and certainly around the globe. And in the words of our decision makers back home and our Indigenous partners back at home, Haichka Miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you very much, Steve. Director Niels. Thank you, Steve.
Dear Admiral Watt, dear Chiefs of Navies, distinguished colleagues from the Coast Guard, dear friends. When we look at the topic, new developments and new solutions, I think it's important that we figure out how important the topic is, how important the maritime trade on sea is. Global free trade is essential for economic, environmental, and international cooperation issues. Up to 90% of the global trade value is transported by sea. Over 60% in total for German foreign trade volume is handled by sea. 2/3 of German imports and export volumes from the third countries or two-thirds countries. Over 75% of the European Union, entire foreign trade handled by sea, and of course, we are here in Singapore, over 90% of Singapore trade's volume handled by sea. We have seen the impact of disrupting seaways in March 2021 due to the Ever Given in the Suez Canal. This incident was caused by pure seamanship. But more than any other incidents, this example demonstrates the vulnerability of the seaways. But seaways are not only vulnerable by pure seamanship, it's also, in this time, vulnerable by maritime threats. The main maritime threats for the perspective of the maritime police in Germany are the hybrid threats and the state-operated terrorism, and near to hybrid warfare. In particular, sabotage acts against maritime critical infrastructure, and the second main threats for us comes from the shadow fleet. We discussed it earlier. Up to 4,000 tankers worldwide and cargo vessels suspected to be used by transport crude oil or other military goods. 90% of Russian oil being transported by shadow fleet. Most of the time, the vessels are in very poor condition, technical bad conditions, and have often no insurance. And it's clear that most of the ships run through the Baltic Sea directly to our operation area. On 26 September 2022, we had an attack on subsea gas pipeline Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 in the Baltic Sea. A total blasting of both pipelines. The investigation of the federal police continues, but let me give you a number what shows the importance of such acts. After the attack on Nord Stream 1 and 2, the global carbon dioxide emission worldwide rises about 0.02% worldwide from this attack. Another phenomenon are towed anchors, vessels towing their anchors in order to damage or destroy subsea cables. And the last incident we had in December 2024, over 180 kilometers over the subsea ground. Most of the vessels are suspected to be part of Russian shadow fleets or are suspected to be linked to Russian intelligence operations. In January this year, a 100,000-ton oil shadow fleet tanker had a total blackout and distress at sea due to bad weather conditions directly off the coast of Germany. For comparison, the accident with the Exxon Valdez cost 35,000 tons spilled into sea. So, you can believe me, it's a direct threat to German, European interest, what happens nowadays in the Baltic Sea and the North Sea, but also worldwide. Now, let me get from hybrid threats to hybrid warfare. Normally, sabotage categorized as a criminal offense. In responsibility of law, police enforcement authorities, and usual is it motivation by financial gains. Hybrid warfare is basically potential motivated and determined by state actors. Perceive and respond to hybrid threats and which government agencies are involved or encountering them. The definition of hybrid warfare differs nowadays totally from those we discussed until 2014. Non-military methods became daily routine for coast guards and navies as well. So, what are the solutions? Low-hanging fruits. We discussed about UNCLOS earlier this day. All measures on sea are in the line with UNCLOS, of course. But we mentioned out there is no way to change UNCLOS, or it's not so easy. So perhaps we find a solution there, and Article 101 defines piracy on the act of violence against property. Maybe this is a point which we discussed further to protect our infrastructure. Another alleged low-hanging fruit, there are already good technical approaches for the subsea detection system, especially in EEZs, when you have wind parks. Every wind park has detection systems. And every modern subsea cable is able to detect ships' movements above them. So we needed new solutions for hybrid threats and hybrid warfare. It does not still make sense to distinguish between military and law enforcement measures anymore. I'm convinced that we need a multi-phased approach, broaden resilience, maintaining situational awareness, collaborative safety concept by the private sector, implementing new technologies for surveillance and domain awareness, in particular subsea, taking operational action by Navy and law enforcement. The approach should be a combination of safety, security, and defense, and enhance international coordination. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes,
Excellency Ambassador Ong, Admiral Sean Watt, esteemed panelists and moderators, distinguished colleagues, Chief of Navies, heads of Coast Guards, heads of delegations, admirals, officers, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege to address you today on behalf of the Indonesian Navy as we explore the transformative developments shaping our maritime environment and their profound implications for regional and global security. As the world's largest archipelagic nation, Indonesia's destiny is inseparably linked to the seas. Our national identity is forged by the waters that connect rather than divide us. For Indonesia, maritime security is not merely a policy choice. It is an existential necessity. Our vision of Indonesia as a global maritime fulcrum reflects our commitment to harnessing our maritime potential while safeguarding the seas that sustain our nation's prosperity and security. Ladies and gentlemen, today we stand at the threshold of a new maritime era, defined by rapid technological evolution, Let me highlight several key developments reshaping our understanding of maritime security. First, the proliferation of unmanned systems. Autonomous vessels and underwater drones are transforming maritime surveillance, logistics, and combat operations. These systems enable persistent monitoring of vast maritime domains at reduced human risks and operational costs. We are looking forward to investing in unmanned surface and underwater vehicles to enhance our domain's awareness and response capabilities. Second, the accelerating application of artificial intelligence. AI-powered systems are revolutionizing maritime data analysis, enabling faster detection of irregular activities and more efficient resource allocation. Predictive analytics are enhancing our ability to anticipate maritime threats and coordinate preventive measures across multiple domains. Third, advances in undersea capabilities. Breakthroughs in acoustic sensing, seafloor mapping, and deep-sea operations are now opening new frontiers for resource exploration and military applications. These technologies not only create unprecedented opportunities, but also raise concerns about secure access to critical undersea infrastructure. These technological developments emerge against a backdrop of increasing geopolitical tensions and competition that affect us all. Their strategic implications demand our collective wisdom. Enhanced domain awareness comes with greater responsibility. Our improved capacity to monitor maritime activities must be balanced with respect for international law and the sovereign rights of nations. As capabilities expand, so too must our commitment to transparency and rules-based governance. In times of heightened tensions, this shared commitment becomes even more crucial. Technology is democratizing maritime power. Advanced capabilities once limited to major powers are now accessible to a wider range of state and non-state actors. This diffusion of maritime power requires new approaches to deterrence and crisis management. Rather than allowing these technologies to accelerate competition, we must harness them as tools for collaborative security. The human-machine interface is evolving. As automation increases, we must develop new operational concepts that optimize the complementary strengths of human judgment and machine efficiency. This demands not only technological adaptations, but also cultural evolution within our maritime forces. Rising tension requires stronger bridges between nations. As geopolitical competition intensifies, the maritime domain risks becoming an arena for confrontation. We must resist this drift toward fragmentation by strengthening institutional frameworks that facilitate dialogue, build confidence, and resolve disputes peacefully. In navigating these transformative changes amid rising tensions, Indonesia is pursuing a multifaceted strategy centered on cooperation, balancing modernization with integration. We are selectively adopting new technologies while ensuring they complement our existing capabilities and contribute to an integrated maritime defense systems that can interoperate seamlessly with those of our partners. Investing in human capital with an international mindset. Technology alone cannot secure our maritime interests. We are prioritizing the development of skilled personnel who can effectively employ advanced systems while fostering cross-cultural understanding essential for multinational operations. Prioritizing regional partnerships as a strategic imperative, maritime security challenges transcend national boundaries, and no nation, regardless of its power or resources, can address them alone. Indonesia is committed to enhancing cooperation with ASEAN partners and beyond through joint exercises, intelligence sharing, and capacity building initiatives. We view these partnerships not as optional additions, but as fundamental components of our security architecture. Building confidence through transparency. In times of suspicions and mistrust, transparency becomes essential. Indonesia is implementing protocols for communicating our maritime activities and technological deployments to minimize misunderstandings and prevent unintended escalation. Promoting inclusive governance frameworks. We advocate for inclusive international mechanisms that ensure new maritime technologies serve the common good rather than exacerbate strategic competition. When tensions rise, institutional frameworks become even more vital as platforms for dialogue and conflict prevention. As we navigate these turbulent geopolitical waters, I propose 5 priority areas for our collective action. First, establishing practical norms for emerging technologies through inclusive dialogue. We must develop shared understandings regarding the responsible use of unmanned systems, AI applications, and undersea capabilities before competitive dynamics establish destabilizing precedents. This requires forums where all maritime stakeholders, not just technologically advanced, have a voice in shaping these norms. The long-term objective is to have universally adopted rules, laws, and formal legal frameworks constructed from those norms. Second, building interoperable maritime domain awareness networks that transcend political divides. Regional security depends on our ability to share actionable information across national boundaries. Even among nations with competing interests, compatible systems and protocols are essential for effective collaboration that can withstand political fluctuations. Third, creating mechanisms for de-escalation and crisis communication. As maritime technologies accelerate the pace of operations, we must establish robust channels for emergency communication and protocols in managing incidents before they spiral into diplomatic crisis. Fourth, ensuring equitable access to maritime technologies. The benefits of innovation must be accessible to developing maritime nations, preventing the emergence of technological divides that could undermine collective security and exacerbate existing tensions. Fifth, identifying areas for practical cooperation even amid competition. History teaches us that nations can cooperate in specific domains while competing in others. Maritime safety, environmental protection, counter-piracy, humanitarian aid, and search and rescue represent opportunities to build habits of cooperation that may eventually extend to more sensitive areas. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, the maritime domain is evolving at an unprecedented pace against a backdrop of increasing geopolitical complexity. In this environment, cooperation is not merely virtuous, it is vital. The alternative, a fragmented maritime order characterized by suspicion and unilateral action, serves no nation's true interests. Indonesia understands that even the most powerful navies cannot secure their interests alone in today's interconnected maritime environment. It is through partnership, not isolation, through dialogue, not confrontation, through shared rules, not unilateral assertions, that we will navigate the challenges ahead. As maritime leaders, we face a profound choice. We can allow emerging technologies and geopolitical tensions to drive us further apart, or we can harness these same innovations as instruments of cooperation. We choose the latter path. We commit to being a bridge builder in troubled times, a partner in technological innovation, and a steadfast advocate for a rules-based maritime order that serves all nations regardless of size or power. Let us demonstrate that even in an era of competition, maritime nations can find common cause in ensuring that the seas connecting us remain domains of cooperation rather than conflict. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to our discussion and, more importantly, to our continued cooperation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Admiral-san.
Ambassador Yang, Admiral Watt, my fellow flag officers, distinguished delegates, and ladies and gentlemen, I am Saito, Chief of Staff, Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force. It is my pleasure and privilege to deliver a speech on the occasion of the opening of the symposium, attended by key partners, key players in maritime security from around the world. This was made possible by strong leadership of Singapore Navy and tremendous effort by Admiral Watt. Please accept my deep respect, Admiral. As you may know, we sent to IMDEX the newest model of destroyer, JS FFM Yahagi. The vessel can operate with a smaller crew and respond to various missions, including detecting submarines and mine sweeping. Sending FFM Yahagi is my tiny gift for you in reciprocation for the luxury hospitality you prepared for me. As I am already expecting another hearty welcome at the next IMDEX, I have just directed my staff to speed up the construction of a new vessel. One of the key roles for navies is to secure the safety of slugs. Having this in mind, we received a grim reminder from the attack on the commercial ships by the Houthi in the Red Sea, which requires us to reconsider how we should secure slugs. In the meantime, as we have technological development in such areas as UUVs in recent years, which enables easy access to an underwater sanctuary, we also need to take into consideration potential threats to critical underwater infrastructure, or CUI. On top of this, as we are losing the ice in the Arctic Sea through global warming, use of Northern Sea route is becoming realistic. Expanding the ship's route open for use. We need to keep an eye on new competition or threats of the horizon. A free and open ocean matters very much not only for Japan, but also for all of you. We are now in an economic hub with half of the world's maritime transportation and more than 60% of the world's GDPs in this region. As the deepest and largest in the 7 seas are the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. I would like to share with you how Japan is contributing to the safety and security in the Indo-Pacific. First of all, we have been working with the Japan Coast Guard since 2009 to ensure the safety of slugs by engaging in counter-piracy operations in the Sea of Somalia and the Gulf of Aden, where we have so far escorted as many as 4,000 commercial ships. Also, while on our Indo-Pacific deployment mission, we are committed to counter-piracy operations or watching for illegal fishing to strengthen maritime domain awareness for our like-minded countries. As part of our efforts in securing the safety of SLUGs, we have been working with such countries as Bangladesh, Indonesia, Cambodia, and Vietnam to upgrade their ports because we know how important it is to secure the stable use of port connecting the sea to the land. As for CUI protection, Japan holds a major position in manufacturing, laying, and maintaining undersea cables, contributing to stabilizing international data communication. Some examples include efforts made by Japan's Nippon Foundation and the Japan Agency for Marine Earth Science and Technology, or JAMSTEC, which are actively working on seabed 2030 to complete the mapping of the world's ocean by 2030 to clarify the picture of the undersea domain. Also, Japan's Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications take a leading role in developing AI systems to detect damaged cables and narrow down the causes. The Northern Sea route may not be included in the Indo-Pacific, but JAMSTEC is now constructing an Arctic research vessel named Mirai 2 to be operated starting 2026. It will help investigations to reduce the impact on Earth by global warming and research the Arctic environment for safe navigation. These efforts cannot be made by Japan alone. It will become only possible by a wide range of relationships and deep trust with relevant countries and stakeholders. The JMSDF is seeking to further strengthen collaboration with our ally and like-minded countries through various training and international conference, and increase international opportunities of sending personnel to shipwright program or foreign educational institution to encourage young generation to deepen person-to-person relationship on various levels as junior, mid, and senior rank officers. I'd like to share with you one example, which is a collaborative work in the Maritime Security Working Group in ADMMM Plus EWG. We are playing a leading role to co-chair the meeting with the Philippines until 2027, run by my good friend, Flag Officer in Command of the Philippine Navy, Vice Admiral Espeleta, and my classmates, retired Admiral Terada. Under this framework, we plan tabletop exercise or joint cooperative activities, assuming multilateral operations with other navies in the case of large-scale natural disasters. We are determined to boost cooperation on maritime security in a wider context. I will conclude my speech by repeating that seas are supposed to be free and open based on rules. This is a cornerstone for world peace and prosperity, and this is also common property that should be upheld by every single one of us. We have strong determination to make tireless efforts in realizing a free and open ocean and a safe and secure ocean in tandem with like-minded countries. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much, all four panels. You've all stuck religiously to the time, which is excellent. So we've got plenty of time for questions from the floor. And while you're gathering your thoughts for that, I thought I'd do what chairmen always do, which is to apologise for actually making the most of their particular opportunities to break the rules by asking the first question. And it's going to be a common question to all of you, which is fundamentally that you've all identified technology as an opportunity and to some extent as a threat. And could I ask you to identify what you think is the biggest single challenge that you face in dealing with the kind of requirements that your Navy or police force has got? And we talked about the defence of shipping, the defence of underwater infrastructure, and to some extent the defence against climate change and things and disasters and things of that sort. So perhaps in the order in which you first spoke, Admiral Steve, could you kick off, please?
Thanks, Professor Till. And thanks to my colleagues here for providing your comments to help frame this conversation. In terms of technology as both an opportunity and a threat, and I know that I highlighted in my opening comments a number of initiatives that my Navy is pursuing, particularly in the domain of uncrewed systems, aerial, surface, and subsurface. But not just that, there's the corporate, the institutional, there's the digitalization efforts that underpin our effectiveness at harnessing the vast amounts of data that a lot of these sensors and autonomous systems will gather and force us to find different ways to assess and analyze that data, to pull out the key or the bespoke or the discrete piece of information that is important or relevant to the fight and whatever that happens to be. So I'm kind of thinking about all of that, but in terms of as much as all of that is opportunity, and as we see the battlefields in Ukraine and others harnessing very quickly how that technology is being enabled to great effect, I think on the other counterpoint of that, the greatest threat to those who are not confronted by an existential threat like Ukraine is, notwithstanding the innovation we see in the private industry, we as navies, although we speak about harnessing innovation and having the speed of relevancy at our fingertips, I think we're still mired in process and bureaucracy, and our propensity to compartmentalize new capabilities through existing institutional architecture. And that's not going to be sufficient to allow us to quickly harness the innovation that's already out there. And when we impose structure and process, when we're not confronted with an existential threat, I don't think we're going to be quickly able to harness that at the speed of relevance, and the adversary will get ahead of us. And so that's what I think is a bit of our threat there.
Yes, that's a good question. I think technical is a solution and a threat or a problem on the same side. As Steve mentioned out, it is very important that we are able to handle the techniques and that we are able to handle the data which comes from the detecting systems. When we analyze the subsea ground by Nord Stream, we got terabytes of data. Nobody can handle this size of data without AI, but AI doesn't work for the first time. You need a 0-1. So we need a technical solution for the subsea ground cable systems, which says, okay, this is there is something and there is something new. And especially we had is different kind of situation in the Baltic Sea. There's a lot of tons of ammunition from the World War II on the subsea ground. So it's very hard for us to handle the technique by our crews, to handle the data and to get a good analysis of the data.
Thank you, Professor. Well, as I mentioned earlier, that Indonesia is facing I cannot say that this is the biggest challenge because we have a lot of challenges in our waters. Not to mention our geographical complexity, which have piracy and illegal activities on our waters, with our limited resources as well. Environmental factors, technological gaps. So with this situation, I think our operators in the field, they tend to use the advancement of the technology to help them face these challenges. So because of this advanced technology, we can say that this technology has become their power. And as what others say, that with great powers come great responsibility. Now it becomes our great responsibility to make sure that the use of the technology will be in good hands and used for the better good. So since we cannot tackle all the challenges alone by ourselves, the challenges that we face, I think, is that we need to ensure that all the user of the seas understand the same thing, that we need to use this technology for the greater good and have a same vision, have a same mindset, and to make sure that no one will use this kind of technology for their own particular interests without any other responsibilities, irresponsibilities, if I'm not mistaken. I think that is good, sir.
This will be in Japanese and translated.
人工知能、無人化技術などは今後の戦闘要素を一変させる可能性を持っていると認識しております。
We see that the technological advancement, such as artificial intelligence and uncrewed systems, it has the potential to fully change the way we fight.
特にウクライナにおける AI と無人機を活用した戦い、装備の早い更新テンポに注目しています。将来的には意思決定と実行サイクルのさらなる高速化を見積もっております。
For example, when we look at the war in Ukraine and how they employ artificial intelligence and unmanned systems, and also how rapid the equipment upgrade drumbeat is, that is all of the elements that we are closely looking at. And as for the future, the decision-making and the execution cycle needs to be very rapid.
技術活用には産軍学の連携、あるいは同盟国、同志国との連携強化は不可欠であり、データ収集と分析を含めて先端技術の活用に努めていきたいと思っております。
And therefore, the importance in being able to use these advanced technologies is the cooperation between military and also industry and academia, and also collaboration with our ally and partners. Those are most necessary. And along with data collection and analysis, that is which are essential to employ the latest technology. The JMSDF, we are very much will make effort to continue the collaboration and full use of the technological advancement. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I can't resist a sort of very quick follow-up. I sometimes worry about whether all the technology, with all of the possibilities that it offers, also offers it to the bad guys as well as us, and that was kind of half dealt with by my panelists up here. But do you worry about the extent to which we might be losing control of our own technology, in the sense that AI might be beginning to take over from us, that we're losing human agency? I don't know if any of you want to follow that one up.
Okay, so I'll take the first stab at that one, I guess, Professor
Steve,
Till.
thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I fear that our first reaction as we prepare for that discussion is to look to what we see in movies, what we see in science fiction, what we see in an alternative future, and but the reality is that artificial intelligence is here today. It is being employed as we speak in many commercial and private sectors. It needs to be employed in military sectors. And so culture, which I mentioned before, is a really strong element that I think we tend to underestimate. And we know we need to embrace technology. We know we need to embrace artificial intelligence to assist us in working through the reams of data that are available to allow us to be effective in the mission. We know the adversary is doing it and using it. And as we roll out those capabilities into our systems, and particularly as we think about how do we roll them out effectively into our classified systems and our command management systems, which allow us to manage lethal force, we have to be very careful in limiting or defining the scope at how much we employ it. And that's hard to do. That's really hard to do because it's so new to us. It's unfamiliar territory. And how do you make sure that the machine doesn't get ahead of the human in the loop? And at what point do you trust the machine-generated solution so that you can focus on something else? It's not an easy space to work in at all. Yep.
Does anybody else want to take it up, or shall we? Okay. If I could, there's a question right in the middle there, and then another one over there.
Thank you very much. My name is Vice Admiral Chauhan. I'm from the National Maritime Foundation in New Delhi. And my question is with regard to the maritime situational awareness piece, which we often wrongly call maritime domain awareness. But there are now a number of information fusion centers that are dotting the landscape or the seascape of the Indo-Pacific as a whole. And clearly there's some requirement to now fuse fusion centers. But how could there are two approaches that I wanted to ask your opinion on. The first is that we do some form of actual normalization of all these various platforms that are specific to different fusion centers. And the other is to try and utilize some sort of internet mechanism which says that you can choose to handle whatever data in whatever platform you choose, you desire, but eventually we must have some common protocol and we will integrate rather than having a single platform which we then proliferate across various fusion centers and various sub-regions of the Indo-Pacific. So my question to the panel as a whole is, which one do you propose and why? Thank you.
I'll take two more questions. So there's one over there. Could you identify yourself?
We're good. Professor Jeff, panelists, thank you. My name is Russell Pegg. I represent the maritime industry. That's not the industry that sells you boots and bullets. That's the industry navies are charged to protect within the text of their national strategies. There's been lots of discussion about interoperability, collaboration, but I've not heard anything about interoperability and collaboration with the maritime services who you need to complete your mission. Two key lessons from activity in the Red Sea were, first of all, maritime domain awareness could not be achieved without commercial input, and at the more basic level, we still can't talk to each other. So before we get to new developments, some of the old building blocks still need more work. Could the panel share with us how they're engaging with the maritime industry customer and incorporating economic and environmental consequence to their strategic thinking? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Is there a third question? Yes, then right in the front here.
Thanks to the panelists. Steve, you sort of got a little way towards what I was going to ask around the question. But I'm really interested in the different perspectives. We talk about procurement, and when we procure, normally it takes many years to procure a capability. When we're talking about technology, like you've been representing on the stage, the technology advancement is occurring a lot quicker. What are your strategies to procure the uncrewed and AI and technology that's different to your current procurement strategies that take years? Just interested in your approach.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, three very interesting questions. The first one, and they're all directed at everybody in the panel, so if you could all think about your answers while I summarize the questions. The first one was about information systems. Should we try and produce one or simply make sure that there are lots but they're all integrated? And the second one, very important issue, about the extent to which navies ought to cooperate with, if you like, our customers in the sense of the shipping industry rather than the lot outside who make what we need. And the third one is basically a reference to the speed and the pace of technical change and how are we going to cope with that, particularly with our procurement systems that we've already got. Could I ask us to do it in the same order again, Steve? I'm afraid.
Which of those questions would you like me to start first, or would you like me to try to tackle all three?
Yeah, well, can you do all three?
I think maybe to answer the first question, I was thinking about what protocols do you identify, or how do you shape the information sharing or the data standards necessary for the variety of these ops centers, these fusion centers? How do you shape all of it? I think, so of our experience, we've worked a lot amongst a number of other government departments in Canada, and this relates a little bit to the second question that came out about the commercial input. What we're finding is that technological engineers always find a way to connect different systems. They somehow do some magic. They create these black boxes that somehow allow one box to talk to another one. And while I agree that we do need to have the appropriate conversations to identify the data standards necessary to allow that potential to be unlocked, I think the greater challenge is, again, culturally based, is how much information sharing are we willing to actually do? And that's a human element in there. You can create an architecture that will allow as much or as little information to be shared as you want, but it has to be baked into policy, baked into culture, baked into humans deciding how much they choose to share. And I think that we need to spend more time on building relationships and understanding and culture to unlock that potential, and worry a little less about the data standards, which, as we've seen time and again, the engineers somehow seem to find a way to make the systems talk to each other. So I think that that's where we need to spend most of our time on, is building the relationships to unlock the information sharing. And to, I guess, the last question from my friend from New Zealand, we're changing procurement by leveraging what we call continuous capability sustainment. So rather than omnibus projects, how do we, through the life cycle of a system, find the inject points to invest the money at the right time to sustain it through life? And I think that we also recognize that if we get away from risk aversion, which is what process and bureaucracy is all about, is to protect the dollar being spent, and raise the delegation limits to warfighters, and allow them to use their delegated authorities, and also a framework or a culture of experimentation, we can quickly acquire capabilities off the shelf, field them, and use them in an experimentation approach while generating operational capability and outputs that we seek.
Yes, okay. I will start with the first question. Yeah, it's really relevant. In Europe, we have a good common system for law enforcement agencies and safety agencies. It's from the EMSA, it's European Maritime Safety Agency, and they hosted a lot of data and give it free to all access. On the other side, that is what I try to mention out, that we come in the situation, okay, which are safety data, security data, and which are defense data. So we try to integrate NATO data, and we are still trying to find a solution, especially some of the data are classified, and I'm totally at the side of Steve when we said, okay, which kind of data we will share. Not every data is needful to share and is in interest of national security. So we figured it out, especially on Nord Stream 1 and 2. That leads me to the second question. We have a good cooperation, especially as maritime police, with industry, with customs service, and so on. And we have a very, very close relationship together. We build techniques together. We sit on round tables and discuss it out. So for us, this kind of session, the integrity of technology and yards and firms and something like goes very well. Yes, and of course, it is a third question then. It's always a kind of money and function, so we had a very, very close control what happens with our money in this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, for the first question, actually, to be honest, Indonesia is still looking for the best solution, which technology can be adapted for our own good. And that is also why we send a representative to join the IFC in Singapore, and we are planning to also send some representative to some other parts of the country on their fusion center, since we are still on the phase of evaluating which kind of system that we need to have for our own. And we currently still thinking on which approach that we need to take. Are we going to take the first or the second approach according to the questions? We still have decided yet, but hopefully we will find the best solutions, and we can get the decision on that in the near future. For the second questions, let's say how to develop interoperability with non-military agency. Let's say we can learn from the past experience where military technology are modified and then developed to be used by non-military users. For example, let's say GPS, encryption technology, they were all developed for the military use, but now eventually adopted and used by non-military users as well. So it comes back to, as our colleague said earlier, it comes back to the human factors. We are the one who decides what kind of technology that we would like to use, and how far the technology can decide for us. It is made by humans, so logically it is best for us to control the technology and limit the use of technology for our own good. And as for the last question, sir? I think the most effective strategies are like, let's say it's modular procurement approaches, where we break large defense systems into interoperable components that allows for targeted technology upgrades without replacing entire platforms. Well, these kinds of approach supports mission continuity while enabling incremental modernization of critical capabilities, which is particularly valuable given long life cycle of military hardware. And then second strategies is proof of concept testing, implementing small-scale pilot project before full procurement commitments aligned with our military risk management principles. Well, this will allow for thorough evaluation of new technologies in relevant operational contexts while limiting exposure and ensuring security requirements before wide-scale deployment. And the last one is the, we call it dedicated rapid procurement pathways, if we can call it that way. We establishing special procedures specifically for urgent technology acquisitions, addresses the reality that some military technology needs cannot wait for standard procurement cycles. And these streamlined pathways maintain necessary oversight while significantly reducing acquisition timelines for capabilities that provide tactical or strategic advantages. So these strategies balance the military's need for cutting-edge technology with requirement for reliability, security, and accountability in the procurement process. I hope that answered the question, sir.
一つ目の質問に回答します。
First on the first question.
昨日、シンガポールのインフォメーションフュージョンセンターを訪問しました。
In fact, I had the opportunity to visit the Information Fusion Center in Singapore yesterday.
アドミラル・ワットのイニシアチブで素晴らしい発展を遂げている姿を目にしました。
And we were able to see the great advancement and growth it has gone through in the past years.
その中で、先ほどの質問者からあったように、同じようなインフォメーションセンターが欧州あるいは南米あるいはインド等にあったと記憶しております。
And we understand that and acknowledge that there are also information fusion centers located in Europe, in the South Americas, and also in India.
それらのシステムをすべて統合するには相当な労力を必要とすると思っております。
And I do believe to come to a normalization of the platforms is going to require a lot of effort by every information fusion center.
さらにそれぞれのインフォメーションフュージョンセンターの強みがあると思っています。それぞれの地域の強みがあると思っています。
And I believe, although they may be named in the same, but I think each fusion center has its own strength.
それをシステムを統一することによってその強みを逃すというのは非常にもったいないと思いますので、現状で十分機能するものと考えております。
And I believe it would be too much of a waste to put a burden on them to standardize the platform, which may take away some of the strength they already have. And therefore, I believe it is best that because I have seen yesterday that it is currently working very well, that it's not required to standardize the systems.
次に3つ目の質問に答えたいと思います。
And comment on the third question.
日本国内では新しい技術の導入にあたってイノベーション研究所というのを立ち上げました。
In Japan, in order to procure new technologies, we have established innovation research center.
イノベーション研究所というのは、新しい技術を導入して装備化するともう装備化した時点で陳腐化してしまうと、それをどうにか回避したいという思いから立ち上げられた研究所です。
So this was established from a concept that, as it was mentioned in the question, that in our existing systems, the equipment would already not be the latest by the time we had them delivered.
徐々に成果も現れてきていると思いますので、私としてはそのイノベーション研究センターの今後の取り組みに期待しているところです。
And we're seeing great improvement with this Innovation Research Center that enables us to experiment with new technologies in a timely manner. And so we're looking forward to working on this even more.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm afraid I'm going to have to draw stumps, as we funny English people say, and come to a conclusion about this. It's in part because I've been asked to give a very, very, very quick summary of the day, not just of this session, which I'll do now. But before I start, could I ask you to join me in thanking all of the panelists for their observations so far? Well, it's been quite a day. And I just want to or being directed to by my boss, as it were, to give you a quick rundown on how it looks from the moderator's points of view of the day. And my lesson really is the key importance of discourse, and I'll explain what I mean in a minute. Now, obviously, we've talked a lot in this package about what the issues are, the geopolitical issues in particular, the main issues intrinsic to the South China Sea, Northeast Asia, Taiwan, and so on, the developing relationship between the United States and China, political, strategic, and economic levels of higher competition, incipient arms races, and all that sort of thing. You know, one thinks of the railway escalations and, that led to the First World War in Europe. Is this kind of thing happening? The worries about how we deal with grey zone operations, which weaponize ambiguity when clarity is really the best guarantor of peace. And of course, something that didn't come up much, to my surprise, the future of globalization in the age of increased tension between liberal free trade principles on the one hand and the growth of protectionist instincts, the tariff war that's going on at the moment and all that. What will the strategic consequences of all of that be? And then there are the kind of existential issues about things like nuclear proliferation, which has reared its head again after a relatively quiet period, climate change, pandemics, all these sorts of things that threaten us in a major way. Then there's the issue of whose problem is it? Who are we expecting to deal with all of this sort of thing? Here we have some of the key players, of course, but who owns the problem? What does the emerging correlation of force between China and the United States mean for the final solution to this problem? Particularly, who owns the problem in these grey zone issues, quite literally between departments or agencies of state, for example? Who is actually responsible for looking after a cable? Is it a government? Is it a commercial company? Is it a Coast Guard? Is it the Navy? There are all sorts of questions there. And then, of course, on top of all of that, we really need to have that sort of Coast Guard community here, a point that's been raised several times. And I think on top of all that, we have something, again, that's fairly novel, and that's the re-emergence, perhaps, of what some people call the politics of personality. Particularly in the US, of course, but by no means limited to that. One thinks of President Putin, Xi, Kim, Erdogan in Turkey, Mr. Modi in India, strong people, strong rulers, and what they think can be a kind of independent variable between the directors of policy and the people who execute policy. And then there's this impact of new technology that we've just been talking about, particularly in this session. Obviously, at the level of how it can contribute to military tasks, and an obvious issue, I think, which is it going to undercut human agency, particularly generative AI? I think that kind of illustrates just how much and how varied all of the issues are that we face. And that brings me on to this point about discourse. There are so many issues, and there are so many interests that have skin in the game, that are involved. And in a sense, the technology issue that we talked about here kind of summarizes it. A lot of technology is not going to be produced for the Navy directly. It's produced by civilian industry for its own purposes, sometimes before the Navy realizes it needs it, if you like. And then that's a question that Russell Pegg asked earlier on about the connections between Navy's Coast Guards and the Marine Services, as he put it, the shipping industry, not defense industry, but the shipping industry. And it really kind of underlines the importance of what you might call the importance of the maritime community, the sense of being all of one company, that we all face the same sort of issues. We're all frontline states. We're all having to deal with these problems at one level or another. And hence the critical importance of discourse. And what I mean by discourse is a free and open exchange of information and views and prospects, not a debate with winners and losers, not a kind of formal process that's expected to lead to formal statements of agreement, if you like, but just the wider ventilation of the issues and what we think we'd face. It's a sort of wider version of maritime domain awareness. And I think that's the whole point of the IMSC and everything that goes with it. What goes on out there, what went on last night at the supper, and what will go on tomorrow, and all this sort of thing. It's the capacity to identify the issues, identify the people who are worrying about the issues, and get alongside them. A combination of interests and to how to take things forward from there. I hope very much, and speaking on behalf of all of the moderators, that you've profited from that, and I'd like you to join me again in thanking this last panel, which I thought was excellent. Thank you very much.